Hello there, people of the internet. Back whenever I was first getting into reloading, I remember trying to figure out what reloading dies did what. And I remember looking up on the internet trying to learn how to reload, and people would just say, yeah, use the sizing die to size your brass, or use this to trim, or use this, that, and the other thing. And they would say, do this, and they wouldn't actually show what things are supposed to look like. So I went out and I got myself just a bunch of random miscellaneous dies, and I really struggled for a while trying to figure out what each individual one was. So that's kind of why I'm making this video, because if we have somebody out there who's struggling trying to figure out what die is what, whenever they go out and they get whatever it is that they're trying to get, this video should be able to help you at least a little bit. So this is not a hard, fast rule. This right here is not a dead certainty of what you're going to see, but this right here is kind of what has become the standard. So unless you're rocking either something really old or something custom made or something that is a little bit unusual, then this right here is pretty much what you're going to see. Alright, so I got a couple of different dies here. I guess we're going to go ahead and just start from the beginning. Right here, this is going to be your sizing die. Oftentimes you can look at the die itself and it's going to have some words and letters and numbers and whatnot on it. If you look that up on the internet, that right there will tell you what that particular die is. The sizing die is what actually crushes your brass back down to the spec to where it's basically like of the same dimensions as new brass. Whenever you shoot, your brass expands to the chamber of your particular rifle, which oftentimes is larger than what is actual spec, and that is a very, very common occurrence. So this right here kind of squishes it back down to the size that it's supposed to be. And you can tell sizing dies because way more often than not, they're going to have a decapper in them. Not always the case, but like I said, this right here seems to be kind of the norm. Sizing die tends to have a decapper on it, and what this is whenever you push your round into your sizing die to crush it back into place, this little decapper is going to push the primer out of the bottom of that particular cartridge. This way you can reload it with a new primer and you have properly sized brass. So again, this is not a surefire way to tell that what you have is a sizing die, but if you have a die with a decapper, it's a pretty gosh darn safe bet that you probably have a sizing die. Again, you can read it or look up the numbers if it doesn't specifically say sizing die or anything like that on it, and there should be able to tell you what you need to know. I guess let's go ahead and have a look at a crimp die. A crimp die is very simple. All that's going to happen is whenever you stick your round inside of the crimp die, it's got like these, let me see if I can get a little light going here. It's got these, well, crimps inside of the die that it's going to use to crush the actual very end of the neck down around the projectile itself to hold it in place. Not a lot of people use these because whenever you size your brass down, that tends to put enough pressure on the actual projectile to hold it in place. But in the event that you want to use this just for a little bit of extra force holding that projectile down, then it might be a good way to go. But you can tell these because more often than not they're going to have those crimps on them. Some are like tapered dies, but that's more for handgun rounds. So if you do come across a die and it doesn't really look like anything and it's just kind of a clear straight slot through and there's no words on it telling you that it's a crimp die, it might be a taper die. And a taper die is, instead of having like jaws that come in and crimp the brass, it's just a taper. Like the walls, although this is an exaggeration, the walls go up at a slant, kind of like this. So as you push the brass up, as it presses into those walls, it's going to kind of compress it, if that makes any sense. Alright, up next we're having a look at a bullet seating die. These are not necessarily, what am I trying to say here? These aren't all that standardized in comparison to how the other dies look. Your bullet seating die can be a little unusual. Like, for example, this right here is a bullet seating die, and this right here is a bullet seating die. I've noticed that way more often than not, especially nowadays, the bullet seating die is going to have like this little threaded top on it, and this threaded top you use to screw and unscrew and that dictates how far your bullet is going to be pushed inside of your brass case. And I'm going to go ahead and take this one apart and show you guys how that works here in a second. But I don't know why, but it seems like people have just kind of standardized on these like straight threaded tops with your bullet seating die, but again, that is not a hard fast rule. I have seen these on the sizing dies with the decappers before. They are kind of interchangeable in a sense. That kind of goes beyond the realms of what to expect with this particular video, but in the general context, if you see something that has a top that looks like this, it's probably, not always, it's probably a bullet seating die. And if you see one that looks like this, it could be a good number of things, but it's also probably a bullet seating die. But how you can tell for sure is if you take the top off, just like that, you're going to have a little internal piece that looks something like this right here. It's literally just a little cylinder that has like a cone-shaped hole in it, and that cone-shaped hole is there so you can press your projectile into your brass without marring up the tip of the projectile. If you look, you see that little hole there, how the projectile just kind of fits inside that? And that is so as you're pressing the projectile and the brass together, the projectile goes into the brass. But if you look on the tip, you see how it's a soft point? This right here is going to make sure that soft point does not get messed up. So if you take apart your particular, if you take apart your particular die and you see that it looks something like this right here, where there's a way to put a projectile into it to press it into the case, odds are you have a bullet seating die. Now these are the primary dies that you're going to be coming up against, and these are the ones that you're normally going to see. Way more often than not, people will just use the sizing die and the bullet seating die. You might have some people that use the crimp die, but that's not something that occurs very often with rifle ammunition. Now this right here is a really unusual one. This is one that you don't see all that often. This is an expanding die. And what this is after you size your particular brass down to the size that it's supposed to be, depending on the projectile that you're using, it might be a little difficult to seat. Like if you look at this projectile, you see how it's got just a flat base on it like that versus something that has like a boat tail style of bullet. Something with a flat base like this right here on a freshly sized piece of brass might be a little bit difficult to seat onto it. And so if you look on the inside of this particular die, we actually have a little bit of an expander in there. This is an expanding die, and if you press whatever brass it is that you're using onto this expanding die, then it's actually going to flare out the tip of that particular piece of brass that you're working with. And with that tip ever so slightly flared out like this, it's going to make seating a projectile like what I have here a lot simpler. So as far as your reloading dies go, these are going to be the primary ones. There's a lot of other stuff that you can get for reloading with all sorts of different purposes and all sorts of things that you can do inside of your presses, and it really is amazing just how versatile some of this equipment is. But if you don't know what it is that you're looking at, then, well, you don't know what it is that you're looking at. So hopefully this helped you guys out. This right here is bullet seating die used for seating bullets. This right here is what they are going to look like more often with a top like this. Of course, you can oftentimes just kind of read the words that are on your die. Like this right here says 22-250. That is a particular rifle cartridge. And it says seat. Fantastic. Now I know that this right here is a bullet seating die. This one does not say seat. It says Lee 762 by 54R and then -K1. And I bet if I look that up, I could probably piece together that that's a seating die. And if I can't, then again, just take it apart and see what you have going on with it. This right here is exactly what you would come to expect with a sizing die. This right here has got the decapper in it. Again, very common with sizing dies. All you do is you want to lubricate your brass first with like either grease or wax or some sort of lubrication so it doesn't get stuck in this thing. But all you do is with your brass inside your press, you press that up into your sizing die and that sizes it, and then you pull it back out. Measure it out, see if you got to trim it. I'd say with rifle rounds, unless we're talking about like magnum rounds or real high pressure rounds, if we're talking about just standard rifle rounds, then I'd say trim it probably every 3 to 5 shots, depending on what it is that you're shooting. I'd just measure it out and keep an eye on that. And then we got our crimp die. Very simple. As the round presses up inside it, these jaws kind of crimp it together. Very, very simple on that concept as well. And then expander die. As you shove your brass up into that thing, that little expander in there is just going to flare out the tip enough to make seating a projectile a little bit easier. Alright, well there we go. Hopefully this is a video that some of you guys found informative. Thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate your time. Like, subscribe, share. Description below has a link to all sorts of stuff. Go check it out. You guys go off. Have yourself a fantastic day. I'll see you on the next episode.
Since I've done this. Bonnie and Clyde be damned. The poor man's Garen. Shame that bolt-action shotguns aren't more mainstream.